Hey everyone! Tonight, we're going to step into a different kind of quiet. We're going to journey back in time, not to the familiar hum of modern life, but to the harsh, sprawling battlefields of 19th century Europe. Tonight, you are a French soldier, one man amidst millions, caught in the relentless, earth-shaking tide of the Napoleonic Wars. Before we begin, I invite you to dim your lights, find a comfortable position, and allow yourself to sink into the subtle echoes of a distant past. Let your body relax, your breath deepen, and your mind prepare to drift. Feel free to let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is for you right now. The morning mist clings to the cobblestone streets of your village like a shroud, and you stand at the threshold of your family's modest cottage, feeling the weight of the letter in your trembling hands. The parchment bears the official seal of the empire, and its words echo in your mind like the tolling of a distant bell. Napoleon has called, and you must answer. The year is 1805, and at 19 years old, your life as you know it is about to end forever. Your mother's tears fall silently as she adjusts the rough woolen collar of your civilian coat one last time. Her fingers, weathered from years of washing and mending, linger on your shoulders as if trying to memorize the feel of you. Your father stands rigid by the hearth, his jaw clenched tight, saying nothing because there is nothing left to say. The empire has spoken, and good French boys must serve. The fire crackles softly in the grate, casting dancing shadows on the walls that have sheltered you since birth. And, with a certainty that settles deep in your bones that you may never see these shadows again. The walk to the village square feels both endless and far too brief. Your boots, the same ones you wore to help your father in the fields, echo against the stones with a rhythm that will soon be replaced by the thunderous march of thousands. Other young men emerge from doorways and alleyways, their faces mirrors of your own mixture of fear, excitement, and resignation. Some carry small bundles hastily packed by loving hands. Others, like you, carry nothing but the clothes on their backs and the weight of unspoken farewells. The recruiting sergeant stands beneath the tricolor flag, his uniform pristine and his bearing proud. His voice booms across the square as he reads from an official proclamation, speaking of glory and honor, of serving the emperor in the glory of France. But his words seem to float past you like smoke, insubstantial and distant. What feels real is the morning air filling your lungs, the familiar scent of bread baking in the baker's ovens, the sound of your heartbeat drumming in your ears like a military cadence already begun. As you join the ragged line of conscripts, you catch glimpses of faces you recognize. Pierre, the blacksmith's son, stands 2 places ahead, his massive hands hanging at his sides like tools he no longer knows how to use. Behind you, young Henri shifts from foot to foot, barely 18 and still bearing the soft roundness of boyhood in his cheeks. You wonder how many of these faces you will remember, how many will survive what lies ahead, and how many will fade like morning mist in the heat of what is to come. The march begins that very afternoon. No ceremony, no grand speeches, just the simple command to move forward. Your civilian clothes feel strange and inadequate as you fall into step with the others, trying to match the rhythm that the veteran corporals bark out with voices hoarse from years of shouting orders. Your feet, accustomed to the familiar paths of home, must now learn to find purchase on unfamiliar ground, to carry you away from everything you have ever known toward a destiny written in gunpowder and blood. The first day passes in a blur of confusion and discomfort. Your shoulders ache from the awkward weight of the gear they issue you at the first depot, a musket that feels impossibly heavy, a knapsack that seems designed to catch on every branch and doorway, a cartridge box that bangs against your hip with each step. The uniform they give you is rough against your skin, the blue wool scratchy and ill-fitting, but you wear it with a pride that surprises you. You are no longer just a village boy. You are a soldier of France. The nights are the hardest. Sleeping on the ground under the open sky, You stare up at stars that seem more distant than they ever did from your bedroom window. The earth beneath you is hard and cold, and no matter how you position yourself, some root or stone finds a way to dig into your ribs. Around you, other men toss and turn, some snoring, others muttering prayers or the names of sweethearts left behind. The sound of their breathing mingles with your own to create a symphony of homesickness that follows you into restless dreams. Days blend into weeks as you march deeper into the heart of Europe. Your feet develop blisters that break and bleed and form calluses harder than the shoes you wear. Your hands grow rough from handling your musket, and your shoulders broaden from carrying your pack mile after endless mile. The boy who left his village begins to fade, replaced by something harder, something shaped by the constant pressure of the march and the knowledge that each step takes you closer to the sound of guns. The veterans who march beside you speak little of what lies ahead, but their silence is more eloquent than any words. You see it in the way they check their weapons each morning, in the careful way they ration their food, in the distant look that comes into their eyes when the wind carries the sound of artillery practice from somewhere beyond the horizon. These men have seen battle, have felt the earth shake beneath the weight of cavalry charges and heard the screams of the wounded echoing across blood-soaked fields. They know what awaits you, and their knowledge hangs over the column like a storm cloud heavy with rain. Your first taste of military discipline comes swift and harsh. A moment's inattention during drill earns you the sharp end of a sergeant's tongue and extra duty cleaning muskets until your fingers are black with powder residue. You learn to move as one organism with hundreds of other men, to load and fire your weapon until the motions become as natural as breathing, to respond to bugle calls and drumbeats that speak a language older than words. Your individual will begins to merge with the collective purpose of the army, and you discover that there is both terror and comfort in becoming part of something larger than yourself. The first time you hear enemy guns, you are still 20 miles from the battlefield. The sound rolls across the countryside like distant thunder, a deep rumbling that seems to come from the earth itself. Some of the newer recruits mistake it for a storm approaching, but the veterans know better. They straighten in their ranks, check their equipment one more time, and their faces take on the grim expression of men who understand that their moment of testing draws near. Your hands shake as you clean your musket that night. Though whether from fear or excitement, you cannot say. Tomorrow, or perhaps the day after, you will face your first battle. The wooden stock feels smooth and familiar in your hands now, like an extension of your own body. You have practiced the loading drills so many times that you could do it blindfolded. But tonight every motion feels clumsy and uncertain. Around you, other men go through the same ritual preparations, some praying silently, others writing letters home by the flickering light of campfires that cast dancing shadows on faces young and old. The morning of your first battle dawns clear and cold. Frost covers the grass like a carpet of tiny diamonds, and your breath forms clouds in the crisp air. The army moves with a different energy today, a sense of purpose and urgency that transforms the shambling column of the march into something more focused and deadly. Officers ride up and down the line, their horses snorting and pawing the ground as if they too sense what lies ahead. As you crest a small hill, the battlefield spreads out before you like a vast amphitheater of death. In the distance, you can see the enemy lines. Tiny figures in different colored uniforms arranged in perfect formations across a field that looks deceptively peaceful in the morning light. Smoke already rises from several points along their line where artillery pieces are being positioned, and the sound of drums and bugles carries on the wind like a deadly music that makes your heart race. Your company is positioned in the second line, behind the veterans who will bear the brunt of the initial assault. You can see their faces in profile, carved from stone and weathered by years of campaigning. These men have stood on a dozen battlefields, have felt the sting of enemy bullets and the spray of blood from fallen comrades. They stand now with the patience of professionals, checking their equipment one final time, adjusting their cartridge boxes, testing the edge of their bayonets with calloused thumbs. The waiting is almost unbearable. Your stomach churns with a mixture of fear and anticipation, and you find yourself checking your musket again and again, though you know it is perfectly loaded and primed. Beside you, Henri mutters a prayer under his breath, his young face pale beneath the rim of his shako. On your other side, Pierre grips his musket so tightly that his knuckles are white, and you can see a muscle jumping in his jaw as he clenches his teeth. When the order comes to advance, it starts as a whisper passed down the line, then builds to a shout that seems to come from the earth itself. The entire army lurches forward like a great beast awakening, thousands of feet moving in rhythm, thousands of hearts beating with the same terrible purpose. You are swept along with the tide, your individual fears and hopes subsumed into the collective woe of the advancing columns. The ground between the armies is rougher than it appeared from a distance. You stumble over furrows left by some long-ago harvest, splash through a small stream that runs red with mud, and struggle to maintain your footing on grass made slippery by morning dew. The enemy grows larger with each step, their uniforms resolving into individual details, their weapons becoming more distinct and threatening. The first volley comes when you are still 200 yards away. The enemy line disappears behind a wall of white smoke, and a sound like the ripping of enormous fabric fills the air. Men around you stumble and fall, crying out in pain or surprise, and you realize with a shock that runs through your entire body that people are actually trying to kill you. This is not a drill or an exercise or a game. These strangers across the field want you dead, and they have the means to accomplish that goal. Your training takes over, and you find yourself loading and firing without conscious thought, going through the motions you have practiced 10,000 times. Load, ram, prime, present, fire. The words echo in your mind like a mantra, drowning out the screams of wounded men and the sharp crack of musketry that fills the air like deadly hail. The smoke from hundreds of muskets creates a fog that stings your eyes and burns your throat, and soon you can barely see 10 feet in any direction. In the chaos of battle, time becomes elastic and strange. Moments stretch into hours, and hours compress into heartbeats. You fire at shadows in the smoke, never sure if your shots find their mark, never certain if the figures you glimpse through the haze are friend or foe. The taste of gunpowder fills your mouth, and your ears ring from the constant noise until the world seems wrapped in cotton. A bullet passes so close to your head that you feel the wind of its passage, and you duck instinctively before remembering that ducking does no good. If a bullet has your name on it, you will never hear it coming. The thought should terrify you, but instead it brings a strange sort of calm. You are beyond fear now, operating on instinct and training, part of the great machine of war that grinds forward regardless of individual fate. When the enemy line finally breaks, it happens so suddenly that you almost miss it. One moment they are there, firing and reloading with mechanical precision, and the next they are running, throwing down their weapons and fleeing across the field like startled deer. The sight fills you with a fierce joy that surprises you with its intensity. You have survived your first battle, have stood in the face of death and emerged victorious. But the aftermath is worse than the fighting itself. As the smoke clears, the field reveals its terrible harvest. Bodies lie scattered across the ground like broken dolls, some still moving and crying for help, others lying in the impossible positions that only death can arrange. The grass is stained red in irregular patches, and the air fills with the moans of the wounded and the buzz of flies that seem to appear from nowhere. You walk among the fallen, helping to carry wounded comrades to the medical tents where surgeons work with bloody aprons and saws that glint in the sunlight. Some of the injured men you recognize, faces that shared campfires and rations during the long march. Others are strangers, boys from distant villages who answered the same call that brought you here. All of them bleed the same red blood, cry out with the same human voices, and look at you with eyes that hold the same mixture of pain and pleading. That night, as you sit by a small fire cleaning your musket once again, you realize that something fundamental has changed inside you. The boy who left his village would not recognize the young man who now sits staring into the flames. You have crossed a threshold that can never be uncrossed, have seen things that will follow you into your dreams for the rest of your life. The taste of battle is bitter in your mouth, but beneath the horror, you feel something else. Pride. You have done your duty, have stood firm when lesser men might have fled. The days following the battle pass in a blur of routine military tasks. Burial details work from dawn to dusk, digging graves for those who will never see home again. Equipment is cleaned and redistributed, weapons are repaired, and reports are written in neat handwriting that reduces the chaos and terror of battle to orderly columns of numbers. You are assigned to help with the wounded, carrying water and assisting the surgeons as they work to save what lives they can. The sight of the hospital tents is something that will haunt you forever. Men lie on crude tables while surgeons work with tools that look more suited to a carpenter's shop than a place of healing. Arms and legs are amputated with the efficiency of long practice, and the screams of patients echo across the camp like the cries of damned souls. You hold down thrashing bodies while surgeons saw through bone, and you learn to breathe through your mouth to avoid the smell of blood and gangrene that hangs over everything like a funeral shroud. Your promotion to corporal comes after the third battle, when Sergeant Dubois takes a musket ball through the chest and dies cursing the Austrians with his last breath. The stripes on your sleeve feel heavier than the pack on your back, and suddenly you are responsible not just for your own survival but for the lives of 8 other men. They look to you for guidance and leadership, and you discover that the weight of command is heavier than any physical burden you have ever carried. The march continues, taking you deeper into enemy territory where every village might hide snipers and every forest could conceal an ambush. Your feet have grown so callous that you could walk on broken glass without feeling it, and your hands have developed permanent stains from handling muskets and cartridges. The uniform that once felt so strange now fits like a second skin, and you move with the easy confidence of a veteran soldier. Winter catches the army in a valley between 2 mountain ranges, and you learn that cold can be as deadly an enemy as any human foe. The wind cuts through your greatcoat like a knife, and your breath forms clouds that freeze on your mustache and eyebrows. At night, men huddle together for warmth, and in the morning you sometimes find that the man beside you has died in his sleep, claimed by cold and exhaustion and 1,000 small wounds that war inflicts on the human spirit. Your promotion to sergeant comes during the siege of a fortress whose name you never learned to pronounce properly. For 6 weeks, you live in trenches that fill with mud whenever it rains and freeze solid when the temperature drops. Enemy artillery pounds your positions day and night, and you learn to sleep through bombardments that would have terrified you 6 months ago. The constant stress ages you in ways that have nothing to do with the passage of time, and when you catch a glimpse of yourself in a polished belt buckle, you see the face of a stranger looking back. The assault on the fortress is a nightmare of ladders and walls and hand-to-hand fighting in narrow passages where men die with bayonets between their ribs. You lead your section up a scaling ladder, feeling enemy bullets whistle past your ears and watching men fall into the moat below with sickening thuds. At the top of the wall, you fight with your bayonet and the butt of your musket, killing men whose faces you can see clearly, whose last words you can hear even over the din of battle. When the fortress finally falls, you find yourself standing in a courtyard filled with bodies, uniform torn and blood-stained, your hands shaking from exhaustion and the aftermath of violence. Your men look to you for orders, and you give them because that is what sergeants do, even when your voice sounds strange and distant in your own ears. You have become what the army needs you to be: a killer, a leader, a cog in the great machine of war that grinds across Europe, leaving a trail of graves in its wake. The Spanish campaign begins 2 years later, and you march south into a land of scorching sun and impossible heat where water becomes more precious than gold. The Peninsula War introduces you to a different kind of conflict, one where the enemy melts away into the mountains and hills only to reappear when you least expect them. Guerrilla fighters strike at supply convoys and isolated outposts, then vanish like smoke before you can bring your superior numbers to bear. You are a sergeant major now, responsible for an entire company, and the weight of command sits heavy on shoulders that have grown broad from years of carrying packs and weapons. Your men trust you because you have led them through a dozen battles and brought most of them home alive. They follow your orders without question because they know you would never ask them to do something you would not do yourself. Leadership in the field is not about speeches or ceremonies. It is about sharing the last of your water when your throat burns like fire and making sure the new recruits know which end of their musket the bullet comes out of. The heat in Spain is unlike anything you have ever experienced. During the day, the sun beats down with an intensity that makes every piece of metal too hot to touch and turns your uniform into a sodden mass of sweat-soaked wool. At night, the temperature drops so suddenly that you shiver in the same clothes that were suffocating you 12 hours earlier. Water sources are few and far between, and you learn to ration every drop like liquid gold. Your company is assigned to escort a supply convoy through mountain passes where Spanish irregulars are known to operate. The road winds through valleys and over ridges that provide perfect positions for ambushes, and you find yourself constantly scanning the high ground for the glint of sunlight on rifle barrels. The mules that carry your supplies move with the patient determination of animals that know their burden, and their bells create a constant jingling that seems impossibly loud in the mountain silence. The attack comes at midday, when the sun is directly overhead and the heat makes everything shimmer like a mirage. Rifle shots crack from the rocks above, and mules begin to fall, their loads spilling across the narrow road. You shout orders that are half lost in the echo of gunfire, deploying your men behind whatever cover they can find while enemy bullets whine off the stones around them. The fighting lasts for 3 hours, and when it finally ends, a third of your convoy is destroyed and 4 of your men are dead. The Spanish fighters vanish into the mountains as suddenly as they appeared, leaving only the smell of gunpowder and the cries of wounded mules to mark their passing. You organize the burial of your dead in shallow graves scraped from the rocky soil, and you know that their families will never know exactly where they lie. The retreat through the mountains becomes a running battle that lasts for days. Your company, reduced now to less than 60 men, fights a series of rearguard actions that slow the pursuing enemy but cost you more soldiers you can ill afford to lose. Food runs low, then runs out entirely, and you find yourself chewing on leather strips cut from broken equipment while your stomach cramps with hunger. One night, camped in a cave that provides some shelter from the mountain wind, you sit with your back against the cold stone and try to write a letter home. The words come slowly, and you find yourself crossing out more than you keep. How do you tell your parents about the things you have seen, the things you have done? How do you explain that their son has become someone they would not recognize, someone who can kill without hesitation and sleep soundly afterward? The letter remains unfinished, and eventually you give up and stare into the small fire that provides the only light in the cave. Around you, your men sleep the exhausted sleep of soldiers who have learned to rest whenever the opportunity presents itself. All of them talk in their sleep, calling out names of sweethearts or mothers or comrades who will never answer again. Their voices echo softly off the cave walls, creating a chorus of longing that makes your chest tight with emotion you cannot afford to feel. Your promotion to the rank of sergeant major comes after the Battle of Salamanca, when Captain Moreau takes a cannonball to the chest and simply disappears in a spray of red mist. Suddenly you are in command of what remains of the company, and you find yourself making decisions that will determine whether men live or die. The responsibility is crushing, but you accept it because someone must, and you have proven that you can survive when others cannot. The Russian campaign begins in the summer of 1812. and you march east with an army larger than any in human history. 600,000 men stretch across the countryside like a river of blue and white, with cavalry squadrons that darken the horizon and artillery trains that take hours to pass a single point. You are part of something magnificent and terrible, a war machine that seems capable of conquering the world itself. The scale of the army is both inspiring and terrifying. Supply lines stretch for hundreds of miles, and the logistics of feeding and moving such a massive force require planning that staggers the imagination. You march past artillery parks that contain more cannons than some countries possess, and cavalry formations so large that their horses kick up dust clouds visible from miles away. You are a single grain of sand on an enormous beach, but you are also part of something that makes the earth itself tremble. The Russian countryside stretches endlessly in all directions, a vast expanse of grass and sky that seems to swallow the army without leaving a trace. Villages appear and disappear like mirages, their inhabitants long fled before the approaching storm. The few buildings left standing are often burned by the retreating Russians, leaving only blackened ruins and empty wells to mark where communities once stood. Your men begin to sicken from diseases that spread through the ranks like wildfire. Dysentery and typhus claim more victims than enemy action. And each morning brings the grim ritual of checking your company to see who has died in the night. You learn to recognize the signs of approaching death in a man's eyes, the particular pallor that comes over someone who will not see another sunset. The knowledge is useful but terrible, and you carry it like a burden that grows heavier with each passing day. The battle for Moscow is anticlimactic in a way that surprises you. The city falls without the climactic fight that everyone expected, but victory feels hollow when you realize that taking Moscow has not ended the war. The Russians have simply melted away into the vast interior of their country, leaving you in possession of empty buildings and streets that echo with the footsteps of an army that no longer knows what it is supposed to accomplish. Winter arrives early that year, and the temperature begins to drop while you are still hundreds of miles from friendly territory. What starts as a strategic withdrawal quickly becomes a rout as cold and hunger take a toll that makes battlefield casualties seem insignificant by comparison. Men begin to fall out of the ranks, too weak to continue, and you are forced to leave them behind because stopping means death for everyone. The retreat from Moscow becomes a nightmare of cold and starvation that defies description. The temperature drops to levels that freeze exposed skin in minutes, and men begin to die simply from the effort of putting one foot in front of the other. Your breath forms ice crystals that coat the inside of your collar, and your fingers become so numb that you cannot work the mechanism of your musket. Food becomes an obsession that drives men to desperate measures. You watch soldiers fight over scraps of moldy bread with the ferocity of wild animals, and you learn to sleep with your rations hidden inside your shirt to keep them from being stolen. Hunger gnaws at your belly like a living thing, and your body begins to consume itself, burning muscle and fat to keep your vital organs functioning. Your company, which numbered 120 men at the start of the campaign, dwindles to fewer than 30 as the retreat continues. Some die of cold, others of disease, and still others simply disappear into the white landscape as if they never existed at all. You keep a mental roll call of the survivors, checking faces each morning to see who has made it through another night. But the numbers grow smaller and smaller until keeping track becomes an exercise in futility. The crossing of the Berezina River is a scene from the depths of hell itself. Thousands of men crowd onto makeshift bridges that sway and crack under the weight of desperate humanity. Men fall into the icy water and are swept away by the current, their screams lost in the general chaos of an army destroying itself in its haste to escape. You help maintain order as best you can, but order is a luxury that starving, freezing men can no longer afford. You make it across the river with 13 men, less than a tenth of your original company. These survivors are hard as iron, tempered by experiences that would have broken lesser men, but even they are reaching the limits of human endurance. You share your last piece of hardtack with a young private who reminds you of yourself at the beginning of this endless war. And you wonder if kindness has become a weakness that you can no longer afford. The French frontier appears like a vision of paradise after months of retreat through enemy territory. The sight of familiar uniforms and friendly faces brings tears to your eyes, though whether from relief or exhaustion, you cannot say. You have led your handful of survivors home across 1,000 miles of frozen hell, and the accomplishment feels both magnificent and utterly meaningless. The battles that follow blur together in your memory like fever dreams. Lutzen, Bautzen, Leipzig, names that mark way stations on the road to final defeat. You fight with the mechanical efficiency of a veteran who has survived too much to be afraid of anything, but you can feel the tide turning against France with each engagement. The enemy grows stronger while your own forces dwindle, and even victories feel like defeats when you count the cost in men you cannot replace. Your final promotion comes after Leipzig, when you are brevetted to the rank of captain and given command of a battalion that exists mostly on paper. The few companies under your command are filled with boys too young to shave and old men who should be sitting by their firesides telling stories to grandchildren. But they fight with the desperation of men who know they are making their last stand, and you lead them with the bitter knowledge that courage alone cannot turn back the tide of history. Waterloo dawns gray and wet, with rain that turns the battlefield into a quagmire of mud and blood. You stand with your battalion in a square formation, watching enemy cavalry charges break like waves against your bristling wall of bayonets. The sound of battle fills the air with a symphony of destruction that you know by heart. But today it has a different quality, a finality that makes every moment feel like the last page of a book that is ending badly. The Imperial Guard makes its final charge in the late afternoon, and you watch these legendary soldiers advance across the field with the same steady pace that has carried them to victory in a dozen countries. But today they meet with fire that cuts them down like grain before the scythe, and for the first time in your military career, you see the Guard break and run. The sight fills you with a despair deeper than any you have ever known, because if the Guard can be defeated, then the war is truly lost. The sound of retreat begins as a whisper that spreads through the ranks like a contagious disease. Men who have stood firm under artillery bombardments that shook the earth begin to look over their shoulders toward the rear. You shout orders that no one hears over the growing chaos, and you realize that your military career is ending not with a glorious charge but with the sight of an army dissolving like sugar and rain. You lead the remnants of your battalion from the field in good order, maintaining discipline even as the world you have known for 10 years crumbles around you. Behind you, the battlefield fills with the cries of the wounded and the triumphant shouts of the victorious enemy. Ahead lies exile for the emperor you have served faithfully and an uncertain future for the soldiers who have given their youth to his cause. The journey home takes weeks, and you travel on foot because horses have become too valuable for mere soldiers' teeth. All right. Your uniform hangs loose on a frame that has been whittled down by years of hard campaigning, and your face bears scars that map the geography of a dozen battlefields. People stare at you in the villages you pass through, some with pity, others with the barely concealed hostility reserved for the bearers of unwelcome news. Your own village appears exactly as you left it 10 years ago, unchanged by the wars that have transformed the map of Europe. The same church tower rises above the same red tile roofs, and smoke still curls from the same chimneys. But you feel like a ghost returning to haunt a place where you no longer belong, and your footsteps echo strangely on cobblestones that once felt like home beneath your feet. Your parents have aged beyond their years, and your mother's hair has gone completely white in the decade of your absence. She embraces you with arms that feel fragile as bird wings, and you are careful not to hold her too tightly for fear of breaking something precious. Your father shakes your hand with the formal courtesy reserved for honored guests, and you realize that the boy who left this house is as dead as any soldier buried on a foreign battlefield. The transition to civilian life proves more difficult than any military campaign you have ever endured. Your body aches in ways that have nothing to do with age. Legacy of wounds that never healed properly and marches that pushed human endurance beyond its limits. Your hearing, damaged by years of artillery fire, makes conversation difficult, and you often find yourself asking people to repeat things you should have heard clearly. Sleep becomes your enemy in ways that it never was during the war. Your dreams are filled with the faces of dead comrades and the sound of cannon fire that seems to come from inside your own skull. You wake in the middle of the night with your heart racing and your clothes soaked with sweat, convinced that enemy cavalry is charging your position. The peaceful sounds of your village, roosters crowing, church bells ringing, children playing in the streets, seem impossibly loud and alien to ears accustomed to the constant background noise of armies on the march. You try to resume your old life, helping your father with work that once seemed natural as breathing. But your hands, trained for 10 years to handle weapons and equipment, feel clumsy when holding peaceful tools. The plow feels wrong in your grip, and the rhythm of agricultural work cannot replace the cadence of military routine that has become as natural as your heartbeat. You are a soldier trying to pretend to be a farmer, and the deception fools no one, least of all yourself. The other veterans in the village understand without needing explanation. They gather sometimes in the tavern, not to drink, but simply to sit in the company of men who have seen the same things and carry the same invisible wounds. You share silence more often than words, because there are some experiences that cannot be communicated to those who have not lived them. The weight of shared knowledge creates bonds stronger than family ties, forged in the fire of battles whose names the civilians mispronounce. Months pass, then years, and gradually the sharp edges of memory begin to wear smooth like stones polished by running water. The nightmares come less frequently, and you learn to sleep through the night without starting awake at every small sound. Your body adapts to the rhythm of civilian life, and your hands remember skills that war had driven from your mind. But something essential remains forever changed, some part of your soul that was left on distant battlefields and can never be reclaimed. You marry a woman from the neighboring village, someone who knew you before the war but is wise enough not to ask too many questions about the men who returned. She accepts your silences and your occasional moments of distance, understanding instinctively that some doors should remain closed. Your children, when they come, know you as a gentle father who sometimes stares into the distance with eyes that see things beyond their comprehension. The emperor dies on his island exile, and you feel the news like a physical blow to your chest. Napoleon was never a friend. He was too far above your station for that. But he was the center around which your entire adult life revolved. His death feels like the final period at the end of a sentence that has taken decades to complete, and you realize that you are now truly alone with your memories. The years accumulate like layers of sediment, each one adding weight to the burden of remembrance you carry. Your children grow up and have children of their own, and you become a grandfather whose stories of far-off battles seem like fairy tales to young ears. You learn to speak of the war in terms that make it sound like an adventure rather than the grinding horror you actually experienced, because the truth would frighten children and serve no useful purpose. Your body begins to fail in small ways that remind you daily of the price you paid for serving France. Your left shoulder, broken by a musket butt at Leipzig, aches whenever the weather changes. Your hearing continues to deteriorate until conversations become exercises in lip reading and educated guessing. A cough that began during the retreat from Moscow never completely goes away, and sometimes you taste blood that reminds you of battlefields where you learned that the human body contains surprising amounts of red liquid. Your wife dies on a Tuesday in early spring, and suddenly you are alone with your memories in a way that feels complete and final. The house fills with silence that no amount of activity can dispel, and you find yourself talking to empty rooms just to hear the sound of a human voice. Your children visit when they can, but they have lives of their own, and you understand that your role in their stories is becoming smaller with each passing season. The man in the mirror grows older with each passing day, his face creased by years and marked by scars that have faded to thin white lines. Your hair has gone completely white, and your hands shake slightly when you try to perform delicate tasks. But your eyes remain clear, and your memory of those distant campaigns grows sharper rather than dimmer as the years pass. It is as if your mind is polishing those experiences, preparing them for some final accounting that approaches with each sunset. You begin to spend more time sitting by the fire, watching flames dance in patterns that remind you of muzzle flashes seen across dark battlefields. The warmth soaks into bones that never completely recovered from that terrible Russian winter, and you find yourself nodding off in your chair more often than you climb the stairs to your empty bedroom. Sleep comes easier now, approaching like a gentle tide rather than the enemy it once was. Your dreams have changed over the years, becoming less violent and more nostalgic. Instead of reliving battles, you dream of moments of quiet beauty stolen from the war. A sunrise seen from a mountainside in Spain, the way snow looked falling on the abandoned streets of Moscow, the sound of your men singing around a campfire on some long-forgotten evening. These dreams feel more real than your waking hours, more vivid than the peaceful village that surrounds your aging body. One evening, as you sit in your chair watching the fire burn low, you feel a profound weariness settling over you like a heavy blanket. It is not the tiredness that comes from physical exertion, but something deeper and more complete, as if your soul itself has grown tired of carrying the weight of so many years and so many memories. The flames flicker and dance before your eyes, and you find yourself thinking of all the campfires you have sat beside, all the faces that have been illuminated by their warm glow. The ache in your bones feels different tonight, less sharp and more like a gentle pulling, as if something is calling you toward a rest more complete than any you have known since childhood. Your breathing becomes slow and regular, matching the rhythm of the settling logs in the fireplace. Each exhale releases a little more tension from muscles that have been held tight for decades, and each inhale brings a peace that spreads through your body like warm honey. Your eyes grow heavy, and the boundaries between waking and sleeping begin to blur like watercolors running together in the rain. The sound of your heartbeat grows softer and more distant, no longer the military drum that has marked time for your entire adult life, but something gentler, more like the whisper of wind through grass on a summer evening. The village outside your window fades into silence, and even the crackling of the fire seems to come from very far away. In this twilight state between consciousness and dream, you feel the presence of old comrades gathering around you like shadows cast by firelight. Henri is there, still young and eager as he was before the Spanish sun burned the life out of him. Pierre stands at attention, his massive hands finally at rest after decades of carrying weapons and tools. Sergeant Dubois nods his approval, his chest whole and unmarked by the Austrian bullet that tore his life away. They do not speak, but their presence fills the room with a warmth that has nothing to do with the dying fire. The weight of your uniform, though you have not worn it for decades, settles comfortably on your shoulders one last time. The blue wool feels soft and familiar against your skin, and the brass buttons catch the firelight like small stars. Your musket rests across your knees, its wooden stock worn smooth by countless hands, its barrel polished to a mirror shine that reflects faces you have not seen in years. The cartridge box on your belt is full, though you know you will never need to fire another shot. Your company forms up around you with the quiet efficiency of men who have drilled together for eternity. They take their positions without orders, each man knowing his place in the formation that will make this final march. The youngest recruits stand beside the grizzled veterans, and all their faces wear the same expression of peaceful resolution. There are no more battles to fight, no more enemies to face, only the long road home that stretches out before you like a ribbon of moonlight. The order to march comes not as a shouted command, but as a gentle understanding that passes through the ranks like a warm breeze. You rise from your chair, though you are somehow still sitting by the fire, and take your place at the head of the column. Your legs feel strong again, freed from the arthritis and old wounds that have plagued them for so many years. Each step is light and easy, carrying you forward on feet that no longer know pain or weariness. The village fades behind you as you lead your men along roads that exist only in memory and dream. The countryside through which you march is a composite of all the places you have been. Rolling hills that might be French or Austrian or Spanish. Forests that could hide Spanish guerrillas or Russian partisans but instead shelter only peaceful shadows and gentle animals. The sky above is neither day nor night but something in between. A soft twilight that requires no sun or moon to illuminate your way. Your breathing grows slower and deeper as you walk, each breath drawing in air that tastes of wildflowers and rain and the clean scent of earth after a spring storm. The steady rhythm of marching feet on the road becomes a lullaby that soothes away the last traces of tension in your body. Behind you, your men sing softly, their voices harmonizing in songs you remember from campfires and bivouacs, melodies that speak of home and peace and the end of all conflicts. The pain in your shoulder fades away like mist before the morning sun, and the persistent cough that has troubled you for decades simply ceases, leaving your lungs clear and strong. Your hearing sharpens until you can distinguish individual voices in the chorus behind you. Each man's contribution to the song is clear and distinct as if he were singing directly in your ear. The constant ringing that has been your companion since too many artillery barrages grows quiet and disappears entirely. Your heartbeat slows to match the gentle cadence of the march, each pulse carrying you a little further from the world of aches and sorrows and bringing you closer to something that waits just beyond the horizon. The weight of decades begins to lift from your shoulders, and you feel yourself becoming lighter with each step, as if the gravity that has held you to earth for so many years is gradually loosening its grip. The road ahead begins to glow with a soft light that comes from no visible source but illuminates everything with perfect clarity. You can see details in the landscape that should be impossible at this distance. Individual leaves on trees miles away. The delicate patterns of frost on grass that grows beside streams you have not yet reached. The peaceful expressions on the faces of animals that graze in meadows that stretch to the horizon. Your men continue their song behind you, but their voices grow softer and more distant, not fading away but somehow becoming part of the very air you breathe. The melody wraps around you like a warm cloak, and you realize that this music has always been there, hidden beneath the noise and chaos of the waking world, waiting for a moment of perfect silence to reveal itself. The sensation of marching begins to change, becoming less like walking and more like floating, as if your feet no longer quite touch the ground. Each step carries you further and faster than physics should allow, and the landscape flows past you in a gentle stream of colors and shapes that blend together in perfect harmony. You are moving towards something wonderful, though you cannot yet see what waits at the end of this final journey. Your thoughts become simpler and clearer as you progress, the complex worries and regrets of a lifetime distilling into a pure sense of completion and rightness. The faces of loved ones appear in your mind, not as memories but as presences that travel with you, their love and understanding flowing through you like warm water. Your wife smiles at you from the passenger seat of consciousness, her hand reaching out to touch yours with fingers that feel completely real. The boundaries of your body begin to dissolve in the most gentle way imaginable, starting with the tips of your fingers and toes and spreading inward like the retreat of winter ice before spring warmth. There is no fear in this dissolution, only a profound sense of relief as the burden of flesh is lifted from a spirit that has carried it faithfully for so many decades. You are becoming something larger and freer, something that no longer needs the familiar prison of skin and bone. Your breathing becomes so slow and shallow that each breath feels like it might be the last. But there is no urgency in this recognition, no desperate gasping for air. Instead, each breath is perfect and complete, filling you with exactly what you need and no more. The pause between breaths grows longer and more peaceful, like the silence between notes in a piece of music that makes the melody beautiful. The light ahead grows brighter and warmer, not harsh like sunlight, but gentle and welcoming like the glow from a window when you are coming home after a long journey. You can feel its warmth on your face, and you know without doubt that this light contains everything you have ever sought: peace, rest, understanding, and an end to all the questions that have troubled your mind for so many years. Your heartbeat slows to match the rhythm of the universe itself, each pulse aligned with the turning of stars and the flow of tides and the breathing of sleeping children in villages scattered across the world. You are part of something immense and eternal, connected to every living thing by threads of light that you can almost see shimmering in the air around you. The sound of your men singing fades to a whisper, then to silence, but the melody continues inside your chest where it will play forever. Their faces smile at you one last time before dissolving into the warm light that surrounds you, and you understand that they are not leaving but simply arriving somewhere first, preparing the way for your own arrival in a place where all soldiers finally lay down their arms. Your thoughts slow like a clock winding down, each idea taking longer to form and requiring less energy to maintain. The constant chatter of consciousness that has filled your head for decades grows quiet, leaving only a deep sense of gratitude for the life you have lived and the men you have served with and the love you have known. Even the most difficult memories seem peaceful now, transformed by distance and understanding into something that no longer has the power to cause pain. The warmth of the light envelops you completely, penetrating to the very core of your being and filling every cell with a peace so profound that you wonder how you ever lived without it. Your body feels weightless and perfect, freed from every limitation and weakness that has constrained it. You are young and old simultaneously, containing every age you have ever been in a single moment of perfect wholeness. Your breathing becomes so gentle that it merges with the rhythm of waves on a distant shore, each inhale and exhale part of a cycle larger than yourself. The pause between breaths grows longer and more serene, filled with a silence so complete that it contains all possible sounds. You float in this quietness like a leaf on still water, supported by something stronger than gravity and more reliable than ground. Time itself begins to stretch and slow, each moment expanding to contain hours or days or years of peace. The urgency that has driven you through decades of action and decision fades away completely, leaving only a timeless present in which nothing needs to be done and nothing remains undone. You have arrived at the destination toward which every step of your life has been leading, and the journey is complete. The light around you pulses gently with a rhythm that matches your slowing heartbeat, and you realize that this rhythm has always been there, hidden beneath the noise of living but constant as the turning of the earth. It is the heartbeat of the universe itself, and you are finally in perfect synchronization with its eternal pulse. Each beat carries you deeper into peace, further from the shore of consciousness toward an ocean of rest that stretches beyond all horizons. Your last conscious thought dissolves like sugar in warm tea, sweet and complete and leaving no residue behind. The boundaries between self and universe disappear entirely, and you become part of something infinite and eternal. A single note in a symphony that has been playing since the beginning of time and will continue long after the last star burns out. The fire in your cottage burns lower and lower, casting gentle shadows on walls that have witnessed a lifetime of joys and sorrows. Your body sits peacefully in the chair where you have spent so many quiet evenings, your face wearing an expression of such profound tranquility that anyone seeing it would know immediately that you have found what every soul seeks. The war is finally over, and you have come home at last. Your breathing grows so faint that it can barely be detected, each exhale releasing a little more of the weight you have carried for so many years. The spaces between breaths become longer and more peaceful, filled with a silence so deep and complete that it seems to contain all the rest the world has ever known. In this perfect quietness, your heart beats slower and slower, each pulse a gentle drumbeat marking time for a soul that is finally, completely at peace. The village sleeps around your cottage, unaware that one of its sons is taking his final leave. Children dream innocent dreams in beds warmed by loving parents, while stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns. The world continues its eternal rotation, carrying night toward dawn and winter toward spring, but you are no longer bound by such earthly rhythms. You have stepped outside of time into something larger and more permanent, a rest so deep and complete that it will last forever. In the dying firelight, your chest rises and falls with breaths so gentle they barely disturb the air. Each one carries you further from the concerns of the waking world and deeper into a peace that surpasses all understanding. The aches and pains that have been your companions for decades fade away like bad dreams, leaving only a profound sense of completion and rightness. You have fought your last battle, made your final march, and arrived at the destination every soldier secretly dreams of: home. The silence deepens around you like still water closing over a stone dropped into a peaceful pond. Your heartbeat slows to match the rhythm of eternity itself, each pulse fainter and more widely spaced than the last. Between the beats lies a quietness so profound that it seems to contain all the rest the universe has ever known. And you sink into this silence like a tired child settling into a soft bed after a long day of play. Your final breath comes so gently that it passes unnoticed, a whisper of air that carries with it the last of your earthly concerns and leaves behind only peace. In the stillness that follows, the cottage holds its breath as if honoring the moment when a soul completes its journey and finds the rest it has earned through a lifetime of service and sacrifice. The war is over, the march is ended, and you sleep at last the sleep of those who have given everything and held nothing back.